Do you remember your childhood? What you did when you were a kid? Do you remember everything that life brought to you, the joy that it brought you? Well, there may have been bad times, but you overcame them. Well, I hope you did, and if you didn't, I pray that you do. Um, well, good morning, afternoon, or night, everyone, and welcome to my presentation. First of all, thank you for listening to me. So, our main topic today is going to be about innocence, as you can see on the screen. More specifically about childhood innocence and how it is portrayed in the short story The Flowers. Oop, sorry. Okay, so before we start, I will be telling you what will be covered in my presentation. So first, I'll do a short biography of the author, Alice Walker. Then I'll do a summary of the story, a short summary with the main points, and then I'll do an analysis. Well, I'll explain to you my interpretation of the story and what I thought, and all the thoughts that I had when I read said story. Okay, so about the author. Alice Walker was born on February 9th, 1944 in Eatonton, Georgia. So her parents were sharecroppers. Her mom was also working as a maid in order to feed her 9 children, Alice Walker included. When she was 8 years old, unfortunately, she got shot by a BB pellet when she was playing with her 2 brothers. That injury in her left eye left her really insecure and self-conscious, but she overcame it now, and she talked about it in a lot of interviews. So, as you all already know, African American people didn't really have opportunities in education in the 90s when the segregation was still ongoing in the USA. But Alice Walker went past that and became the valedictorian in her high school. She got a scholarship to Spelman College in Atlanta, and then she transferred to Sarah Lawrence College in New York. So she is a poet, a writer, and an essayist. Those are her occupations. She writes a lot and got a lot of essays. Her poems are also really well written, well, of course, so I invite you to go read them. So her work, she's a teacher, a lecturer, and a social worker. She writes a lot about, she protects essays, she talks about feminism. So moving on, Steven Spielberg adapted her book, The Color Purple, her most popular book, into a movie. So I also invite you to go see this one too, as well as her poems. About the story, let me do a little summary. So Maya, a little African American girl, was out skipping in her parents' sharecropper cabin. She went into the pig pen and the smokehouse, and then went into the forest. Now, normally, she goes in a certain path with her mom. This time, she decided to go in another path and walk down there. When she went there, she started feeling something. The atmosphere was really eerie, and she didn't feel comfortable, so she tried to go back, but then her foot got stuck on something, and as she tried to get it unstuck, she saw a corpse, the corpse of an African American dead man. Dead. And she didn't really have that much of a reaction. She was more interested when she saw the noose. She laid down her flowers next to the body and went away. Well, that's what we think from the story as readers. Okay, so my thesis and what I thought when I read the story was that African Americans' childhood innocence is not sustainable. compared to white children that are more protected and are more innocent for most of their childhood. They don't get it taken away from them. So throughout the story, that's what I was able to interpret. So I was able to interpret it by a lot of techniques that Walker used. For example, this metaphor: Maya watched the tiny white bubbles disrupt the thin black scale of soil and the water that silently rose and slid away down the stream. Now, the interpretation here is, by a lot of people, tiny white bubbles represent white people, and thin black scale of soil represent black people, African American people. So here it says that white bubbles disrupt the black soil, which is exactly what happens in the USA. Like the man that we see in the story was lynched, and it's kind of like white people disturbing them. If you go, there's a lot of stories of people being lynched and white people just seeing, and that's just heartbreaking. But the interpretation that I came up links with this, because with how much white people have been racist on black people, and how their actions towards white people were towards black people, African American people, were so horrid that African American children were not able to be hidden from it. It wasn't something exclusive to adults. Even children were being exposed by the racism, and that's how their childhood innocence, their view of the world, was really cut in the beginning of their lives. And that's how I think that childhood innocence isn't sustainable to black people, while white children can be more protected from it. They don't really get into the social world until they're more older. They don't get into politics and the terrible things that happen in the world until they're of age, let's say, not in their childhood anymore. This can also be seen by the point of view. We don't really know what Maya thinks, what her thoughts are in her mind. So by this citation, Maya gazed around the spot with interest. At that moment, Maya is interested, and she seems calm. She's gazing. She isn't scared. She isn't running away. She's looking at the man, as if she's already seen this before. And that furthers my point. Children, black children are always are not protected by this. They already see the dead bodies. They have already experienced the worst that can be seen when they're already so young. It's as if Mayab already knows what happened to the man. That's why when she sees the news, it's at that point that she pays her respect, as if saying, I know what happened to you, and I'm sorry that it happened. As if she already knows. We can also see this by what the author says in the setting, what the roundabouts of the place is. So here, they mention that she's in her family's sharecropper cabin. So that means that her parents own a sharecropper farm. Well, they don't own it, is what it is. Somebody else owns it, but at that time, sharecropper cabins were an extension of slavery. So even the crops that they did grow weren't really all theirs. They didn't really get anything in the end. The owner, on the other hand, got most of it. Like, for example, 90% of it came to the owner, or something around those numbers. So there was a problem with the money. They couldn't really get to the toys that they wanted. They couldn't get the food that they wanted. So they were subjected with that struggle. While white children, I'm not saying, well, not all of them, of course, were in a good like living, but most of them had enough money to buy toys and be happy from problems. With my third point, they were unprotected from outside problems. Like as I said earlier, social problems, politics. White children weren't exposed with the racism that happened outside because they were white kids. So they didn't really understand what really happened and what really happened to those sharecropper families. The crops, they didn't get enough food to survive, as I already said, and the money that's linked to the toys, they can't get things that they want. They can't get anything that they want, just the bare necessary to be able to survive. And that's the difference. They can't think of the world as okay when everything is subjected on them, when everything like this is happening to them. That's why I think that white children and black children have so different lengths of childhood innocence. It's just what I'm trying to say is that it's unsustainable for black children and almost only exclusive to white children. Okay, so I got 2 questions for you, and I would love if you could answer them in the comments. So first, how does the death of the man change the way that Mike sees things? So we can see in the story, I've read a lot of interpretations from other people. I was curious, and a lot thought that in the end, Mayap's innocence is gone. She sees the world in a better way. But what does she see? What does she think? Does she think that the world is terrible? Does she think that there's hope? I would love to know what you think about this. The second one is, how do you think Maya would have reacted if she wasn't an African American child? If she never witnessed any of the true horrors that they suffered at that time? What if a white child, a white little girl, was the one that was out into the woods and that found the body? How do you think that girl would have reacted? Would it have been the same as Maya? Would it have been really far off and really different? I'd love to know what you think about this. Well, in the end, thank you very much for listening to me. I hope you answer in the comments my questions if you want to, of course. And if you have other questions, I'll be delighted to answer them. So thank you very much, and I hope you at least understood what I was trying to say with my interpretation. Thank you. And those are the works that were cited, and yeah. Thank you. Goodbye.